Hi everyone, it's Becky here. So welcome to our second day in Whistler. So this is actually my first time visiting Whistler after living in the Vancouver area for almost 20 years and just so here I am at Olympic Plaza with the rings, and the Olympic Games are now playing on this big screen in the middle of the Olympic Plaza. Yeah, it's a lovely little place to stroll around. There's some people sitting down on the benches watching the games. So I'm going to sketch the 5 rings from this point of view. So I'm going to start drawing the contour outline of the alpine behind everything. As you can see, I left some gaps for the trees to overlap. And yeah, now I'm ready to draw these evergreen trees covering part of the alpine. As usual, drawing the left side of each tree first. And the median line, the vertical median line of the tree is a trunk. Most of the time is not that visible, but I can always kind of envision it. And then drawing the right side. And for each tree, I do the same thing. I usually draw the left side and envision the vertical median line, which is the trunk in the middle, and then the right side's contour outline. And then suggesting a bit of branches and twigs and little folds of foliage inside the outlines. So keeping my hand pressure and 90-degree angle holding the pen to the surface of paper to get these very thin lines of branches done. Now I'm drawing the pyramid shape of the tent that I can see 2 triangles, the flaps of the 2 sides that I can see, and the legs of the tent on the 4 corners of the pyramid shape. And going back to this cluster of trees to suggest the overlapping feel even better, and then a couple more branches for this tree in the very front. Okay, and then extending the shapes of this tree below. And I think there's a fence kind of thing over here behind the tent. And adding a bit more details for these trees. Now, I think I want to draw one person to give a better sense of proportions between these things. Just a man passing by, walking on the lawn. And now I want to extend this fence a little further towards the middle and right. Just get these straight segments of vertical bars in and keep extending this horizontal bar towards the right. And I think this fence, it ties all the busy foliage clusters together, nice and neat. Yeah, so there will be more trees behind the fence on the bottom of the alpine as well as in the middle ground on the right hand side. Now I'm ready to draw the 5 rings of the Olympics. So as you can see, I did not trace the 5 rings over my pencil draft because sometimes I do change my mind in terms of the positions of these elements. And now I'm just drawing these double circles to form the ring shapes and accentuate some parts a little bit more. And that's the Olympic rings. So after getting the exact shape of the 5 rings done, I'm ready to free myself by drawing these loose shapes of trees behind the rings under the alpine. Again, these trees are at different heights. And this one, I believe, is a maple tree in the foreground. And keep drawing the organic little details for this maple tree. For me, I always like to get the median line, which is the trunk cutting through the middle, and the smaller branches and twigs. And a little bit more details for these evergreens. and drawing some tiny people, yeah, around the rings. Going back to these trees to suggest a better sense of overlapping, yeah, a little bit behind some of the rings. Okay, now I think I'm ready to draw the vacation lodge on the right hand side, starting with the shapes of the roofs and these slanting lines that suggest the slope of the roof. Yeah, a lot of stacking shapes, mostly trapezoids and triangles. And the body part of the buildings are usually like rectangular prism shapes or cubes. I think this one has like 2 levels, and suggesting these very foreshortened windows on this side. And these windows are facing me straight in the front, accentuate the frame of the building a little bit with heavier lines. Okay, and now I just want to include this tree over here on the right hand side. It covers the vacation lodge really nicely. Adds a good balance on the right hand side as well. And lower than the bottom of these 2 twin trees, I see lamp posts and yeah, other posts. And also I want to include these tiny people in the distance, smaller than a man on the left hand side, giving a sense of depth. Yeah, finishing up this second tree here side by side. And yeah, as I move toward the right, I'm able to include another tree or 2 here. And I'm going to loosely finish the right side of my sketch with the roof and the abstract shape of the vacation house, a couple windows there. So I'm sketching along with a live play of the Olympic Summer Games in Paris. So it's a nice kind of atmosphere. That's one of the fun about working on location, is that you always have the sound and the smell and other things around you to be even highly more engaged in the creative process. And now I'm drawing these foliage texture for the alpine and adding a bit of details of folds and lands showing in between. I think this part is a zip line. Yeah, showing some bare land. So the details on the alpine is very gentle, a little bit misty because of aerial perspective. The atmosphere is always changing the tone or the values of anything in the far distance. And these gentle lines are also suggesting the slope of the alpine, giving the mountain even more three-dimensionality. Now let's get inner details for these trees in. Yeah, a lot of freedom expression, just getting these simple squiggles into these blank spaces. Accentuate the trees a little bit. Okay, now I think I want to draw a couple more people. Yeah, so most of the time I have to use my short-term memory to get these little human figures done, and a little bit preconception as well, because all humans, when they're walking in front of us, the gesture is very, very similar all the time. And it's just the difference of sizes standing on different horizontal levels when they're more or less far away. And now I'm drawing the rocks piling up, making up this terrace over here supporting the railings in front of the Olympic rings from this point of view, and just summarizing the rocks as well. I think there's a flower bed with these golden plants and more rocks behind. So I think hand pressure when holding a fountain pen when drawing rocks and other organic things, pretty much everything in the world that we draw we don't have to use the same hand pressure pushing down the pen on paper, just so we were able to create a more lively balance of heavy and lighter lines. So if the entire drawing is of the same hard lines or very soft lines, it's kind of static. So yeah, drawing with a fountain pen is really fun. Sometimes the harder pressured lines may not be done by our intention. So sometimes it's a happy accident. And yeah, just release our creative energy and embrace all of the appearances of the lines. Drawing the shrubs over here. And the last stage of the drawing is to get some accentuations and just fill in those medium small shapes with some details, like behind the rings there should be more foliage texture. And I want to draw this other fence thing in the middle ground. Accentuate the trees a little stronger. Yeah, so just drawing a couple more people behind the rings and foliage texture, just so it's really like hollowed area behind the rings. And now it's time to paint. I'm going to start with the sky as usual, putting cerulean blue, and also blending in a little bit cobalt blue, especially for the higher part of the sky. The blue is the most intense, and using horizontal brush marks to make the sky atmosphere pretty organized. Because it's a hot summer day and watercolor dries almost instantly, so well, it's okay to have a little traces of brush mark that shows movement of air in the sky. And I want to keep the lower part of the sky in lighter blue tone. Now I'm ready to paint the lawn area by wetting it with clear water first. Here comes yellow green first, which is yellow ochre mixed with lime green and viridian green. Okay, so now I'm going to use a very similar color to paint the alpine. So the green in the far distance, they're usually more muted. So as you can see, I'm using a muted yellow-green, which is yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna into lime green and viridian green, diluted with more water compared to the lawn area, because the mountain has a slightly faded out mix of colors overall. And evergreen trees, even though the parts that are exposed to the sun, they still have a more muted yellow-green compared to grass. So yeah, mixing viridian green with yellow ochre, now shading these trees at the same time by mixing burnt sienna into viridian green, wet into wet. Because the paint dries really fast on a hot summer day, so I'm working on the bright and the shade color pretty much at the same time. Yeah, so the very left side of this vista, the trees are shaded. Yeah, so directly I'm adding this shaded green for these 3 trees on the far left. So when I'm painting foliage, I actually do not use that many colors. I mostly use lime green, viridian green, yellow ochre, and cadmium yellow. Mixing these 4 colors together at different ratios, I'm able to create a pretty wide range or shades of greens, as well as playing with water control with the 4 colors. Okay, so these trees in the middle, the sun is shining a lot on them.
In the medal rounds, anything can happen, and Canada not in its best here today. For these players who have done so much for the Canadian program.
So if you have been watching my other videos painting landscapes, this time is actually different from my previous times because the paint on a hot summer day dries really fast. I am drawing the bright and the shade colors at the same time, not in layers. Everything emerges together in one layer, nice and smooth. to avoid dry brushing marks or some hard edges of brush marks. And now using a blend of yellow green and some mid greens in more diluted brush marks compared to the trees in the middle ground. As I mentioned before, things far away, the color value or tones are faded out. So if you want to establish a strong sense of distance, make sure you paint your things in the far back in faded out color tones. Okay, so now as I painted the alpine behind, the trees in the middle ground, relatively they're looking about the same color tone, the alpine, so they need to be intensified. So I'm mixing a very concentrated dark shade of green by mixing Viridian green, burnt sienna, and even a little bit of cobalt blue to make the green even more intensified. And this painting is very much monochromatic. So it's very much all greens, yeah, in this landscape, and it's hard to make it interesting. But the thing we can do is to higher up the contrast. Things closer up to us, they could have a more concentrated tone.
100 kilometers an hour, 40 degrees is the ultimate release between 40 and 42.
And a lot of people, I think they give up too early on their paintings is because they probably haven't added enough contrast. That's why the frustration happens. If you add some contrast in certain areas, your picture is going to look so much more dynamic and compelling than before, just like what I'm doing here. And you really need to be bold enough to punch on these very strong colors, but at the same time, not overdoing it. I think the mountain behind it doesn't need any of these intense blue-greens. So the summit is fully exposed in the sun. These trees are like partially shaded, mostly shaded, partially illuminated in the sun. So just playing with balance of bright and intense greens for the trees. And for the lower part of the alpine, little choppy brush marks to suggest these loose foliage laying over here. So I am adding contrast to the alpine, but as you can see, the intensity of the green-blue shade is very watery. It's not as strong as the trees in the middle ground. So yeah, so it's not coming forward and compete with the middle ground and foreground objects. And now I'm using yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt sienna to paint the vacation lodge in the middle and foreground, as well as cadmium yellow for the flowers here below the terrace. And some more fresher greens for the bit of grass, using this diluted yellow ochre for the color of the terrace, and leftover teal for the roofs of the vacation lodge. Some more light colors for the flower bed area. And I'm going to shade in between the railing bars, the bottom of those trees. There we go. So the negative spaces are well solved. And quickly painting in these little shaded areas using browns and leftover grays. Okay, so now I think I want to shade the white tint, giving it a bit of a sunshine yellow stain first, and then grabbing some leftover blue and purplish gray, as well as this plastic fence behind it. And grabbing some shade of green to add a bit of shadow on the lawn from the terrace, and also to show the layers of grass a little bit stronger. Shadows for these people as well. So most people are wearing white, black, or gray, but sometimes you can see a red shirt, and red is pretty important in my little sketch here. It adds a sense of cheerfulness, even just a little bit on that shirt. And finally, moving on to the final polishing stage, intensify the small shaded areas here and there, and to color in some little spots that I missed painting, adding shadows for these two people there. Tiny little drops of shade of green for the trees and the edge of the lawn close to the edge of the terrace. That shadow there is getting stronger. Yeah. Some tiny spots of brown to intensify the bulging feel of the rocks. And here is the look of my finished sketch of Olympic Plaza here in Whistler. And me and my mom are going back to our Airbnb to pick up the car, and we will be on the road for Pemberton, which is about 35 minutes drive from Whistler. So I'm going to see you very soon in my next video at Pemberton. Bye everyone, have a great day.